We've seen over the years what Georgia can do with receivers who are not highly ranked nationally. Uh, you got guys like currently Dylan Bell, most recently Lab McConkey. There's been plenty of receivers at Georgia that have exceeded expectations. Is that going to be the case with Thomas Blackshear, who just committed from to Georgia from out of Savannah? I don't know. But he has picked the dogs, and Georgia doesn't usually, as we've seen lately, they've done a good job of. And I failed to mention AD Mitchell. They've done a really good job of getting really good players at receiver that are diamonds in the rough and making diamonds out of them. So the development over time from Kirby and Company, it's a big deal. Here's what Matt DeBerry had to say about it. He said, Savannah native out of Calvary Day chose the Dogs over Florida State and Tennessee, giving them their first wide receiver of the 25 class. The Savannah native has plenty of size and length at 6'2", 190, and flash playmaking ability on a consistent basis this last year. The thing that I noticed the most in the highlight, so it's highlights. We always say this about highlight is their highlights. They're not. We don't see blocking on highlights typically, but in this case, you're talking about in Blackshear a guy who it seems like it's difficult to tackle him. That's the way I would put it. It seems like it's very difficult to tackle him, and that's always a strength in a sport where you have to tackle people. So there's that. But globally speaking, Georgia, the recruiting has been what separated them from everybody else. When I say everybody else that used to be somewhat their peers: Florida, Tennessee, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, specifically those three, have separated themselves in ways that, well, it's not surprising considering how hard they're going at it. But this this is a really good class so far for the Dogs, and it's Georgia heavy, which we've not seen a lot of over time with Kirby and them. And look, here's my take on, well, everybody says always wants, guys from Georgia. I don't see how that. I mean, that's a great story, I guess, but would you turn away Todd and Todd Gurley and Bowers and Carson Beck or Keith Marshall, Todd Gurley, Sony Michelle? There's just been so many really good out of state players through the years that have gone on to become legends. Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean. So it doesn't matter where they're from. It is curious that the first, I don't know, six, well, not all six, are Georgia, who are from Georgia: Kingsland, Evans, Buford, Alpharetta, Ellenwood. We'll see if all those stick or not or whatever, but that is a curious thing. We've not seen that a lot from Georgia here lately. But I think the thing like you should clear your mind of in terms of Georgia recruiting is are they behind or something like that. Um, I just there's they know what they're doing. It is the core of what they do, and I think this is just another example. I mean, every year we report on 25, 30 guys that commit to Georgia, and you never know what the future will hold for any of these guys. Usually, and I've not done this yet here with Blackshear, but what you would prefer is to have the ability to see every single guy play in person. That is harder and harder to do because of what I just said about guys not being in the state. There are some guys from the Savannah region right now who are really good players, and that you know it's not a great football area. Savannah, it's when I was growing up, it was much better at basketball than it was football. But it's a population center, and it can't be shocking that um, guys are coming out of there. It seems like there are more and more in the last 7 years that are coming out of Savannah. But you would think that that would be more common in Savannah, but that's another story for another time, I guess. So they're moving forward with the 25 class. Just signing this 24 class, which was an exceptional class, particularly on the offensive line, which is how you build your program. Look, this ain't gonna stop. Georgia is dead serious about this particular aspect. I go back to this story often. Um, I was talking to someone extremely high up in administration at Georgia, and their comment was, this was before Georgia. I think this was before. This was just after Georgia played for the national championship. We were looking backward in 2017. We were looking backward on Kirby Smart's first, I don't know, 18 months. I guess it was 2 years at that stage of time, and I remember where I was. Starting this person at a basketball game. There was no, wasn't a typical basketball games when baseball, basketball. You can run into people all the time. It's not like football games are insane for me. I can hardly do anything. So there's two things. If you see me, say hello. If I don't respond, there's one of two things happening. Usually it's number one is that I don't have great hearing in those situations. When there's low ceilings or a lot of crowd, I have problems with that. A lot of times it sounds like people are saying defense rather than Dean, so there's that. Second, it could be that I'm not paying attention because there's so much going on. At basketball games, or baseball or whatever, I go to tennis a lot. It's not the same at all there because you can hear and you can talk to people. And in this conversation, long story short, long story long, I was talking to this person who is still very much involved at a very high level at Georgia, and they were like, we weren't real sure. We kind of thought this, the cost it was a lot of cost going into recruiting. We didn't know if it, but like I think their notion was then we started to understand we had to do this. This was something that was really important for the long-term success of the program. Kirby, the first 18 months, I would say. So that would be like December to June or July of 17. There was a lot going on in that time. Okay, you're talking about a first-year head coach. They were not practicing where they had to bus to practice. I think it was about 20 minutes on the buses and then 20 minutes back. So you weren't burning an hour, but it was pretty close, for 45 minutes, 50 minutes. And then the first recruiting class was good, not great, not elite like this has been since. So and then the first season was, Kirby said it wasn't up to the standard. It wasn't a good season by any stretch. It wasn't a bad season. It was a forgettable season, I would say, in many ways. You had a lot of tight games. The North Carolina game, the Tennessee game, the Vanderbilt game, the Auburn game, the Georgia Tech game. There were a lot of games, the Kentucky game, where Georgia became the modern version of itself that night. It grew up as a program in Lexington in 2016. But they didn't have all of the arsenal. They didn't have all of the firepower. Butch Jones was not wrong in suggesting you have to do things brick by brick. He just left a bunch of bricks out. He didn't have any mortar. He didn't have the right tools. Kirby gathered those things, and from that point forward, they're not. This is going to sound bad towards like Tyler Simmons, who's I'm thinking of immediately. They are very rarely anymore recruiting at the level of, say, a Tyler Simmons. They are recruiting at a national level for all players. And at the beginning, it was not quite like that. They weren't having as much success as you would like now. Remember, Tyler Simmons came down to Georgia and Bama, and Georgia got him. It looked like it could have been Bama, but that's another story for another day. But it took time to get where they're at right now. It took time. And, whenever you start talking about commits, it just makes me think about, Thomas Blackshear committed today, but it makes me think about the progression. The first person, I was actually, I think, the first person to talk to Kirby's first commit, which was Richard LeCount. I had to pull over on the side of the road to do it. But, Richard said, well, I want to bring a national championship to Georgia. He did not, but he was there with Quavo and Deon, DeAndre Swift on the sideline. That really, I could think is a famous picture from Dylan Weber over at Dawg Post of the three of them just going crazy when Keely's running down the sideline. Everyone saw the vision. It took, in my opinion, it took Kirby's vision, and it took his determination to point the program and the institution. Okay, it was the institution that needed to be pointed as well. And I talked about that in 2008 and 2012 and like a long time ago. I talked about this is, you got to be serious about this. If you really want to win, you got to be serious. And I think he was the person that everyone was willing to listen to. But there was doubt at the beginning now. When I say doubt, there was, doubt's the wrong word. There was hesitation at the beginning because Georgia has always done things the way that Georgia's done it, which always yielded the same success rate. We're going to see, and this is going to be something that Alabama's going through right now, we're going to see it's going to be hard for Georgia to go backwards in terms of frame of thinking. Florida had a lot of turnover, and that's how they got away from Urban Meyer and that mindset of championships. For, Alabama, they've made a good hire at head coach, it seems. But can he keep up what Nick's doing? I don't know. But all of the machinery and all the parts are in place. He's just got to run it now. And my suspicion is that Kalen DeBoer will be really good. But he didn't build Alabama. Nick did. And Kirby helped with that too. And now we're going to see Alabama, who is changing captains, going up against something that's full throttle, which is Georgia under Kirby Smart. And this is not the perfect example of it with Thomas Blackshear committed to the Dogs today, but it's one example. Anyway, thanks for watching.